Hello there. It's been a long time since last video due to work reasons and whatnot, but now I'm finally back. And today, I know I said I was going to look at some DOS game, but before we do that, today I've decided to dig up another oddity and like a hidden gem of sorts to look at. Due to popular request, I dug up a game called Iron Grip Warlord, which is a game developed by ISOTX and released in 2008, so it's not super old, but it's quite an odd title. So first, ISOTX was founded in 2005 by Dutchmen Vincent van Geel and Birger Rupp. The company eventually stopped existing entirely in 2015. The company's founders both had a background in the modding community, which is very key to the existence of this game, but the modding community around Command & Conquer Generals is the heritage of the company. In 2007 they released the Iron Grip The Oppression mod for Half-Life 2, which basically included all that Warlord was to include later. The mod introduced their steampunk Iron Grip world, where there's a war raging between the Confederacy and the Ramos, as they're called. The Confederacy uses mechanized units to bolster their ranks, including walking mech-like creatures, and the original mod pitted a human defender playing an RTS-style game controlling AI forces and building defenses, while the opposing team consisted of multiple human players attacking that base. So one human against several other human players, with one being an RTS commander and the other being attackers trying to take down that base. For Warlord, which was their first commercial game released in 2008, as I said, they instead switched this formula a bit so that a team of human players collaborate in building and defending in a mix of RTS and FPS against a continuous stream of AI attackers. So you can see how the concept grew over time from the mod into becoming a new thing. And they also switched to using the Quake 3 engine for Warlord, ditching the source engine heritage of the initial mod. Now on the surface, Warlord might look like a very bland shooter, but there are lots of interesting things to uncover here. So first, let's deal with why it might seem slightly familiar when you look at it. And this is because it's one of the last, at least that I know of, commercial releases to be built using the Quake 3 engine. And you can both see and feel it, even if it has some bells and whistles added to it. Seeing such a late use of that old trusty Q3 engine is peculiar indeed, but by then the game engine was open sourced and it was easy to work with. Another thing that might catch your eye here is the visual style. So this is proper steampunk. It has a very clear and fascinating art direction, which is some sort of diesel punk world with Victorian style buildings and weaponry, but also giant mechs and tanks. So overall this adds a lot to the game, because not only is it coherent, it's very well executed given the limitations of the old rendering code. So now as for the gameplay, it's very unique in that it is a blend of FPS and tower defense. So you see, the game is played with your side defending a central stronghold, basically in co-op with other players preferably, while wave upon wave of enemies approach along one of multiple lanes. Once in a while an enemy leader will appear on the battlefield, and it's absolutely vital to target him ASAP, because as long as he's active, the enemy score will not go down. Thus, to win, you must beat back increasingly difficult waves while clearing the enemy leaders as soon as they arrive. So this is where the interesting tower defense building mechanic comes in. So by pressing the so-called RTS key, you immediately switch to an overhead view where you can not only control your character in a bird's eye perspective, but you can also build defensive structures and traps. So these range from machine gun nests and anti-tank turrets to tripwire mines and explosive barrels. It really works like a tower defense game, only in the style of a co-op shooter. So this part, planning defensive parameters and funneling the enemies, is very clever and fun. Building costs points, which you gain by dispatching enemies. So thus it's important to keep dropping enemies quickly so that you can keep building. So each structure can also be upgraded by selecting it in the RTS mode and spending points to make it bigger and stronger and more powerful. So you can also switch to a wrench and repair any damaged structures that you come across, which leads to a frantic darting around to keep your defensive network up and running. The game has a tendency to become more and more hectic when there's larger and larger waves of enemy forces that arrive. So while it's a bit dull in single player, I have to say, the game is clearly meant to be played in a multiplayer setting with some close friends. And then it truly shines as you scream at each other to build defenses, you try to relay from what direction the enemy mechs are approaching, and so on. It can also get brutally difficult at times, so it takes some close coordination to succeed. The feel of the game is excellent, and the shooting feels spot on, probably thanks to the proven id Tech 3 game engine. Luckily, the key draw of the base build, the key draw here, the base building overlay, works very well too. It's super simple to switch between views, and building things is straightforward. It tells you where you can place things, where you cannot place things. It tells you the points cost and so on. It's very clear. However, you need to plan ahead, because not only does structures cost different amounts of hard-earned points that you can get by shooting the enemies, they also require upkeep. So where you place them so that you can easily maintain them and repair them in the FPS mode is kind of critical. So this gives rise to a rather surprising depth of play, where a match can start out simple, but it quickly evolves into a debate where to set up defenses, where to position players to maximize the ability to defend. If you lose your core base building, it's immediately game over. So the game received a map pack later on, but in general the game failed to catch on. It was available on Steam at one point, but at the time of recording this, the game is sadly not available for purchase anywhere. So the Steam page is still there, but you cannot buy it, and it's unclear who owns the rights to it following the demise of ISOTX. Before closing down, ISOTX also released Iron Grip Lords of War, which was an online browser-based game. This was followed by their final release, which was the isometric semi-turn-based strategy game Iron Grip Marauders in 2011. So neither of those releases were, however, as quirky and unique as Warlord, but more run-of-the-mill free-to-play games. So sadly, the game not being available now means that it can be difficult finding a reliable copy these days, but if you do, it does run fine on modern machines as well, also probably courtesy of id Tech 3 and OpenGL render. And you can easily set up a game with friends across tunneled LAN if you want. There's something about the design that makes me wish it would come back in some form, or that another game would pick up the whole defense/FPS combination that Warlord tried to do. All in all, it's a very good multiplayer game, that and a bit of an oddity that you should try if you happen upon a copy of it and have some friends to play with. So that was a bit of a short look at a game today, but I'll be back with less delay in between this time, and the next time this time it will probably actually be a DOS game, but we'll see.